Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about, is this normal? Customer stunned after Doordash driver demands extra tip for delivering in the rain. So being a gig worker means you are driving around and delivering items, and sometimes that means delivering in the rain if you choose to go out. At the end of the day, it is still your choice of whether or not you go out. And while some would look forward to the idea of customers choosing to be more generous during these times, it's not always reality, but the demand of expecting them to tip more is unreasonable, in my opinion. So in this video, we are talking about everything that is being said in this article, how it actually is for Doordash UberEats and Grubhub drivers and customers, and everything in between. So with that said, let's get started. A Doordash customer was caught off guard when her driver requested an extra tip to compensate for delivering in a rainstorm. She posted screenshots of the exchange to Reddit, where the post quickly went viral, reigniting a familiar debate about tipping etiquette and whether customers should have to bear the costs of gig workers operating during hazardous weather conditions. First off, if you don't want to deliver in the rain, you don't have to. Second, unless it is specifically like if there is a legitimate hazard that the rain has literally forced you to do something you wouldn't have done during a delivery otherwise, other than it just raining, I cannot see a reason that you should even consider making a demand or request of that nature. Yes, I'm a firm believer of no tip, no trip. I believe that you should be getting a tip from your customer before service, before even picking up the order, before even accepting the order. But that's the point. Like, just because it started raining during your delivery, that doesn't mean you expect more tips or demand more tips. The driver sent a photo documenting the heavy rain pour along with a message. It's heavily raining out here. If you can add compensation, that would be greatly appreciated and helpful. 10 minutes later, the driver followed up with another message. Driving more than 10 miles to get your food delivered. Okay. You accepted it. Again, this goes right back to the point. No tip, no trip. Not no tip, do the order anyway. Not no tip, hint at the idea of them tipping more. Not no tip, guilt them for how many miles you would have to drive for this delivery. No tip, no trip. Or not sufficient enough tip, no trip. It's that simple. That doesn't mean you accept the order and do this crap. That's stupid. Doordash customer, you/appropriate idea 185's Reddit thread from May 28th, 2025 has 890 upvotes and nearly 400 comments regarding the situation. Drivers and customers shared OP surprise at Rob's the delivery driver's ask, but most agreed that additional tips in response to weather conditions are courteous and even expected. Oh, this is actually an interesting one. I didn't think it would go in this direction, by the way. I'm a firm believer of only accept orders that you would be willing to do regardless of whether or not the rain is pouring, the sun is shining, or whatever external circumstances that there are. Because that's the reality. There are going to be other external circumstances that affect your order's quality. And you should only accept orders that would be good regardless of these inconveniences, or if you're not comfortable delivering in the rain, don't deliver in the rain. I am surprised this is the direction it took. Others couldn't help themselves from sharing tired individualist notions in response to the slightest hint of complexity, respectfully and revealing a bit of what's wrong in the world. With all due respect, I get you're sick saying, but no one is having anyone risk their life for some food. You're either choosing to deliver in bad weather or don't. Whatever happens during that time is not the customer's fault at all. That is certainly a way to put it. I want to say that the author of this article is on the side of drivers for this, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess I just wasn't ready for this position from the framework the article is presenting. So I'm almost taken back by that. I can't tell if it's a good thing or a bad thing yet. People said it's common sense to tip more when the weather is bad. Both drivers and customers chimed in on the thread. Most agreed that asking for a higher tip just because it's raining is an insane ask. However, many added that it makes sense to tip more if a driver is inconvenienced or in some cases put at risk by a delivery. The asking is insane, but tipping more during a rainstorm is just courteous. If my driver is having to get soaking wet, I want him to feel compensated, commented You Big Yugi. Okay, so that's the direction this is going. So it's not so much that the act of tipping more during a rainstorm is necessarily the problem here, because that's the reality, is that during a rainstorm, it is going to be more of a risk for the driver. And unless you don't want drivers to deliver in the rain at all, then you should tip them more during that time. But the act of asking for that tip is the real problem here. That's the real focus of this issue. I'm honestly a little surprised that it's taken such a mature approach, because the internet is far from anything in the terms of maturity. So I'm glad that we're taking that approach. Someone with experience driving for DoorDash shared that while they never ask for a tip, the tip amount should track with the increased effort and the risk involved in completing a delivery during bad weather. It's materially more dangerous to drive in heavy rain. Yet, when I dash, I'd still get people not tipping at all. I would never ask, but if you're so willing to go out and drive in the rain, but expect someone to do it, you should be tipping them more than usual, said Disastrous L3378. Okay, so there was a TikTok that came around a while back. It was during like a hurricane or something, and this was a pretty active Instacart shopper. And one of the things that she liked to do is to see how many people are actually on Instacart, ordering Instacart, asking for an insane number of items during that hurricane and not tipping at all, because those people are out in force. That is crazy. Customer No Paramedic 9269 tipped an extra $20 when a driver made a delivery during a down. Needless to say, he was soaked from head to toe. I apologized profusely and ended up giving him an extra $20 because I myself wouldn't have been out in that stuff myself, let alone picking something up for someone else. And that's the point at the end of the day. These gigs are a luxury service. They're a convenience. Therefore, they're going to cost more. No one wants to accept orders from a customer that chooses to be cheap. You just attract better customers when you know they're willing to pay more. DoorDash base pay is low and many drivers rely on tips to make ends meet. According to a DoorDash support article, delivery drivers' pay accounts for a combination of base pay, promotions, and tips. DoorDash says base pay per delivery ranges from $2 to $10 and is calculated in relation to time, distance, and desirability. But drivers on DoorDash have cited actual base pay ranges for as low as $2 to $3 per delivery. DoorDash says promotions are opportunities to make more. They're like gamified incentives like peak pay, challenges, and delivery streaks. Cool. This is not a game. It's someone's paycheck, but okay, thanks. Jesus Christ. I've never felt so validated by an author from a news article. Usually it's the opposite. Like they're slandering the gig worker so hard to where it's the opposite effect entirely. This is a gig worker that understands it and knows that this is what it looks like to be a gig worker. A part of me says this person has firsthand experience, but I can't confirm that. Who is this again? Susan Lamarca? I appreciate you, Susan. Just throwing that out there. The only thing I would have to say that is inaccurate is that they changed the terminology from orders delivered and per delivery to offers. So even if you get an order with like 3 orders attached to it, there's a good chance that $2 base pay actually covers all 3 of the orders that are in a single offer. But here's when the customer comes in. DoorDash delivery drivers keep 100% of their tips. Some drivers won't even accept small orders because they know the tip won't cover their effort. With your $3 tip, we would make about $5 on the delivery. I generally do not waste my time on those. Fun critter shared on Reddit. Yeah, that's another thing that is on this subject that I don't think is talked about enough. Yeah, I get that your burrito only costs a certain amount, and that $3 tip may encapsulate a 20% tip in terms of the app, and sometimes even 30% if it's a low enough item. But there are some times where you just shouldn't be DoorDashing orders. Let's also acknowledge that point. If you're putting in an offer for a bottle of soda, I have seen that. That is not worth a DoorDash order. It's just not. If it's, okay, I'm getting a bottle of soda and a couple of other items that I may not have now, but I can have later, then it would make sense to order an amount, and the tip would probably increase because of that. That's the point. Like, you don't waste money on sending through a tiny order that no one wants. That's just reality. That's how you build resentment and dependency on an app that, let's be honest, is already money hungry. Only 59% of Americans tip consistently on food deliveries. Customer tips are how drivers make money, and yet, according to a 2023 Pew Research study, only 59% of Americans tip on food deliveries. The study showed that people who have not worked for tips are less likely to tip. Imagine that. You know, usually when they cite a study like this, it's actually from something that defames gig workers. I'm so glad that they went for the opposite approach here. And it's 59% and then often is 17%. That's very interesting. Again, the link will also be in the description as well for this one. Feel free to check it out. People could be tipping less to offset the increased prices all around. But it's not as if DoorDash drivers aren't affected by the same rising cost of living. Captain Cheese suggested customers to calculate their tips based on distance traveled, at least $1 a mile. Base pay from DT is usually $2 per order. Usually Dashers will look for at least $1 per mile to base your tip on distance from your house to the restaurant. I usually go $1.50 or $2, but yeah, that's to each their own there. This is my opinion. It's worth what you pay for it. None of you pay me. There you go. I am all for the concept of only taking quality orders. I also am for the concept that customers should be tipping more depending on the weather and other circumstances outside of simply their own little bubble. But that also said, the act of the driver requesting for an extra tip is irresponsible in my opinion. Like, if you didn't like the value of the order upon acceptance, you shouldn't have taken it. I don't care what program you're trying to qualify for. I don't care the external circumstances that you felt forced to accept that tip. I don't care if it's your only app. If you need to make more money, diversify your gig portfolio, develop an exit strategy. Remember, the gig economy is an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not simply the goal. And these are all things I consistently teach in the Driven Wyld Discord server. If you guys aren't part of the Driven Wyld Discord server as of yet, make sure you join that in the description. And also, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time.